The Mediterranean sun streamed through the villa's ancient windows as I stood frozen, my mother's words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. This villa belongs to Marcus now. You need to leave. I'm Sophia, 32, and for the past 2 years, I've been living in and restoring my grandfather's historic villa in southern Italy after his passing. Now, during our annual family reunion, my parents had chosen to ambush me with this announcement. My younger brother Marcus stood smugly beside them, his wife Victoria clutching his arm with a triumphant smile. The same brother who hadn't visited Grandpa once during his final years, too busy building his empire of failed startups in Silicon Valley. You can't be serious, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Grandpa left the villa to me. I have the papers. Papers can be changed, my father declared, pulling out a folder. We've had our lawyer review everything. As the only male heir, Marcus has the rightful claim to the family estate. The gathered relatives murmured among themselves. Aunt Maria, Grandpa's sister, watched from her corner seat, her dark eyes narrowing at my parents' performance. The only male heir. I laughed incredulously. This isn't 1850. Grandpa specifically left the villa to me because I was the only one who cared about preserving it. Preserving it? Marcus stepped forward, gesturing around the room. Look at this place. It's stuck in the past. My development plans will turn this into a luxury boutique hotel. We'll make millions. I looked around at the room he was so casually dismissing. Every inch of this villa held memories. The hand-painted ceiling frescoes Grandpa had restored himself. The ancient olive wood beams he'd lovingly maintained. The marble floors where he taught me to dance during summer visits. You want to turn our family home into a hotel? My voice cracked. It's just business, sis, Marcus shrugged. You can have a job here if you want. Maybe in housekeeping. Victoria laughed, and I saw my mother hide a smile behind her hand. The same mother who'd once spent summers here with me, helping Grandpa tend his olive grove. I've spent 2 years restoring this place, I said. I've used my entire savings, learned traditional restoration techniques, worked with local artisans. And we appreciate your hobby, my father interrupted. But it's time for professional management. Marcus has investors ready. Investors? Aunt Maria's voice cut through the tension. She stood slowly, her small frame commanding attention. Interesting. Have you shown them the study yet, Sophia? My parents exchanged confused looks. The study. Grandpa's private sanctuary had remained locked since his death. He'd left me the key with specific instructions not to open it until the right moment. What about the study? Marcus demanded. Aunt Maria smiled mysteriously. Alessandro always said the villa's true inheritance was in his study. But then you wouldn't know that, would you? You were too busy to visit when he was alive. I felt the weight of Grandpa's key in my pocket, where I carried it every day for 2 years, waiting for that right moment he'd spoken of. Open it. Aunt Maria nodded to me. I think your grandfather would say this is the right moment. With trembling fingers, I pulled out the old brass key. My parents and Marcus followed as I walked to the heavy wooden door that had remained sealed for 2 years. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The door creaked open, revealing Grandpa's sanctuary. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. His desk, his books, his collection of maps and documents. But it was the large envelope on his desk that caught everyone's attention. On it, in Grandpa's elegant handwriting, was written, "To be opened when they try to take it from you, my dear Sophia." What is that? Marcus lunged forward, but Aunt Maria blocked his path with surprising agility. Your grandfather knew this day would come, she said softly. He knew they would try to take his legacy from the only one who truly understood its value. I picked up the envelope, my heart pounding. Whatever Grandpa had left in this room, whatever message or document was waiting in this envelope, I knew it would change everything. Open it, Aunt Maria encouraged, while my parents and Marcus watched in tense silence. As I broke the seal, I could almost hear Grandpa's voice, smell his familiar scent of tobacco and olive wood. The right moment had finally arrived, and I knew nothing would ever be the same after this. Little did my family know, Grandpa's study held secrets that would shatter their plans and reveal the true meaning of inheritance, one that had nothing to do with gender or business plans, and everything to do with love, respect, and preservation of our family's real legacy. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Several documents slid out, along with a letter in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. The afternoon sun filtering through the study's windows illuminated the papers as I began to read aloud. My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, they've finally shown their true colors. Your parents and brother have never understood that our villa isn't just property. It's the heart of our family's history. But you, my dear granddaughter, always understood. Marcus scoffed, but Aunt Maria silenced him with a sharp look. I continued reading. What they don't know is that this villa holds more than just memories. In 1943, during the war, our family protected priceless artifacts from looters. The Italian Heritage Commission granted our family permanent protected status for this service. The villa isn't just a house. It's a registered historical monument. My father's face paled. That's impossible. I shuffled through the documents, finding official papers from the Italian government. It's all here. The villa can never be commercially developed or significantly altered. Any changes must be approved by the Heritage Commission. Those papers could be outdated. Marcus stepped forward, his business facade cracking. My lawyers can find a way around. There's more? I interrupted, returning to Grandpa's letter. I've watched you restore these walls with the same love I once had. While your brother sent birthday cards and Christmas gifts, you spent every holiday here, learning our family's stories, understanding our legacy. Victoria tugged at Marcus's sleeve. Surely we can contest this. The hotel project is dead, Aunt Maria declared. Alessandro made sure of that. I pulled out another document, this one newer. The Heritage Commission approved my restoration project last year. Grandpa submitted it before he died. The villa is now officially under historical protection, with me as its designated custodian. You knew about this? My mother turned to Aunt Maria accusingly. Of course I knew. I helped Alessandro prepare everything. We both saw how you all treated this place, like a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. More papers slipped from the envelope. Photographs, old letters, and a detailed inventory of every historical feature in the villa. Grandpa had documented everything, creating an unbreakable chain of heritage that no developer could touch. This is ridiculous, Marcus exploded. I'm the son, the male heir. This villa should be mine to what? I stood up, feeling Grandpa's strength flowing through me. To destroy? To turn into another soulless luxury hotel? Look around you, Marcus, really look. I gestured to the study's walls, where maps showed the villa's centuries-old olive groves, the ancient well system, the historical gardens. Every stone, every beam, every fresco tells our family's story. This isn't a business opportunity, it's our heritage. Your brother's right, my father started, but Aunt Maria cut him off. No, he's not. And deep down, you know it. She walked to a portrait of Grandpa hanging on the wall. Alessandro watched all of you chase money and status, forgetting where you came from. Only Sophia remembered. I found another note in the envelope, this one addressed to my parents, to my son and daughter-in-law. I love you, but you lost your way. The villa isn't a possession to be fought over. It's a responsibility to be honored. Sophia understands this. Let her show you how to remember. My mother sat heavily in Grandpa's old leather chair, the fight draining from her face. All those summers we spent here, remember? She asked my father softly. Before we got caught up in Marcus's business ventures and social climbing. Marcus wasn't ready to give up. But the investors can invest somewhere else, I said firmly. This villa stays in the family, preserved as Grandpa wanted. You're welcome to visit, to reconnect with our heritage, to let your future children know their history, but it will never be a hotel. Victoria pulled Marcus toward the door, whispering urgently about calling their lawyer. But looking at the official Heritage Commission seals, we all knew it was over. My father stood silently, running his hand along Grandpa's bookshelf. He collected these books for years, he said quietly. I used to help him organize them every summer. The shelf is exactly as you left it, I told him. I never changed it. Something shifted in the room's atmosphere. My mother wiped tears from her eyes, looking around as if seeing the study for the first time. Aunt Maria smiled knowingly. Alessandro always said the villa would choose its own guardian, she mused. He just helped make it official. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the study's windows, I felt Grandpa's presence strongly. He'd given me more than just the villa. He'd given me the means to protect our family's soul. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out the final document. Grandpa left detailed plans for restoring the entire estate, including the olive groves. He hoped it would be a family project. My parents exchanged glances, memories of happier summers flickering in their eyes. Even Marcus paused in the doorway, looking back at the study where he'd once played as a child. The villa had spoken. Now it was up to them to listen. 1 year later, I stood in the villa's restored garden, watching my family gather for our first olive harvest since Grandpa's passing. The transformation wasn't just in the villa's restored beauty, it was in the people around me. Marcus sat under an ancient olive tree, teaching his young daughter, born 3 months ago, about the different types of olives, reading from one of Grandpa's old notebooks. After the study revelation, he'd initially retreated to lick his wounds, but something unexpected happened. The birth of little Isabella had shifted his perspective entirely. Sophia, he called out, waving me over. Remember how Grandpa used to say each tree had its own personality? I found his notes about this one. It's over 300 years old. The brother who once saw only profit margins now spent weekends learning traditional olive cultivation. His hotel investors were long gone, replaced by a genuine interest in preserving our family's agricultural heritage. My parents had undergone their own transformation. Mom was in the kitchen, recreating Grandpa's traditional recipes with Aunt Maria, while Dad led tours for local schoolchildren, sharing our villa's wartime history of protecting artifacts. The Heritage Commission was impressed with the restoration, Aunt Maria said, joining me in the garden. They're considering making the villa a center for traditional agricultural education. I nodded, watching Victoria help her daughter touch the gnarled olive tree trunk. My sister-in-law had surprised everyone by becoming passionate about the villa's historical gardens, even taking courses in Mediterranean plant conservation. Grandpa would love this, I said softly. He knew it would happen this way, Aunt Maria smiled. That's why he left such detailed instructions. The study wasn't just about legal protection. It was about giving everyone time to remember what matters. She was right. The past year had been about more than just physical restoration. Every weekend, family members would arrive, helping with different projects. My parents restored the library. Marcus worked on the olive groves, and even distant cousins contributed their skills. The villa was alive again, but differently than before. Not as a luxury hotel, but as Grandpa had envisioned, a living connection to our past and a bridge to our future. Lunch is ready, Mom called from the terrace. The long wooden table that had witnessed countless family meals was set again, laden with traditional dishes made from our own olive oil. As everyone gathered, I noticed Marcus hanging back. Everything okay? I asked him. He bounced Isabella gently in his arms. I was wrong, Sophia. About everything. I was so focused on building something new that I couldn't see the treasure we already had. The villa has enough room for new dreams, I assured him, just not at the expense of its soul. Isabella will grow up knowing her heritage, he said firmly. Not just the property, but the values, the history, the connection to the land. Over lunch, surrounded by family, the conversation flowed freely. Dad shared stories about helping Grandpa restore the frescoes as a boy. Mom remembered learning to cook in the villa's kitchen. Even Victoria contributed, discussing her plans for reviving the historic herb garden. I found something else in the study, I announced, pulling out a weathered journal. Grandpa's complete family history going back generations. He wrote it during his final year. The table fell silent as I opened it. He wrote about each of us, what he hoped we'd remember, what he dreamed we'd become. Read it, Marcus urged, surprising everyone. We should know. As the afternoon sun painted the villa's walls with golden light, I read Grandpa's words. He wrote about love, legacy, and the true meaning of inheritance. About how buildings can hold more than just people. They can hold the stories that shape us, the traditions that guide us, and the love that binds us. The villa was never about ownership, I read from his final entry. It was about stewardship, each generation adding their own chapter while preserving those that came before. Sophia understood this instinctively, but I always hoped everyone would remember eventually. Looking around the table at the faces of my reconciled family, I knew Grandpa's hope had been realized. The villa hadn't just been saved, it had saved us, bringing us back to what mattered most. As the sun set over the olive groves, casting long shadows across the ancient stones, I could almost hear Grandpa's laugh in the evening breeze. His beloved villa was more than preserved, it was cherished, alive with new memories while honoring the old. The study's revelation hadn't just protected the villa's structure, it had restored our family's foundation. And that, I knew, was Grandpa's greatest legacy of all.
They say you always remember the moment the truth starts to crack through the surface. For me, it was somewhere between the second glass of Pinot Grigio and the opening chords of the string quartet's rendition of Claire de Lune. My name is Nomi Lachlan. I'm 41, recently widowed, and the only daughter of Vivian Lachlan, the woman half this room calls visionary, and the other half wouldn't dare call anything at all. Tonight was supposed to be about my father, the man whose quiet generosity built the Lachlan Foundation into a beacon of charity. But it only took one sentence from my 13-year-old son to tell me something else was happening. Mom, Silas whispered, tugging gently on the sleeve of my dress. They're signing you out tonight. I blinked, disoriented by the hush of candlelight and the hum of 100 well-dressed guests gliding across the ballroom floor. What do you mean? I asked, bending toward him, trying to keep my voice light. It's just a gala. His eyes didn't waver. It's not. I wanted to laugh it off. He'd always been perceptive, too perceptive for someone his age, but this felt different. His voice wasn't alarmed. It was resigned, like he'd already pieced something together and was just waiting for me to catch up. Then I saw it, my name, or rather the absence of it. On the printed program beside each place setting, "Welcome to the 25th Annual Lachlan Gala honoring Frederick Lachlan's legacy," there were bios of the board, the speakers, the special guests. Declan, my brother, took up an entire column with a black and white portrait I hadn't seen before. My name was missing. So was any mention of the work I'd poured into this organization for the past 7 years. Nomi Lachlan, who kept the foundation alive after our father's stroke, who wrote the grant proposals and fielded the press and kept the donor dinners from imploding, erased with quiet precision. At the head table, my name card had been replaced. A donor sat in my seat. My new place was tucked against the wall beside the AV booth. I hadn't been asked to speak. I hadn't even been asked to help plan the program this year. Silas leaned in again. They think you won't make a scene. That's why they're doing it now. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a tribute. It was a transition, and I wasn't supposed to be part of what came next. I grew up in a house where image was everything and silence was currency. In the Lachlan family, we didn't raise our voices. We straightened our shoulders, adjusted the pearls, and said, "Thank you," even when the knife was still in our back. My mother, Vivian Lachlan, never needed to shout to control a room. She just had to glance. And that glance could freeze water. She ran the family the way she ran the Lachlan Foundation, with an iron will wrapped in silk. Emotions were theatrical. Vulnerability was weakness. Even as a child, I understood that tears earned you distance, not comfort. My father, Frederick Lachlan, was the only one who gave softness a home. He believed in integrity, not presentation. While my mother dressed pain in pressed linen and matching lipstick, my father listened with quiet eyes and calloused hands. But even he couldn't balance the scales completely. When he passed, I was the one who stayed. The one who organized the files, returned the donor calls, kept the staff from panicking. The one who kept the foundation breathing. Still, I knew my place. When I married Jeremy, a high school English teacher with a crooked smile and a heart that belonged to public service, my mother smiled through it like it was a phase. "He's kind," she said, which in Vivian speak meant he won't advance us. He wasn't from money, didn't wear tailored suits, and didn't talk real estate at fundraisers. But he saw me. And that counted for something. After Jeremy died, I should have had time to fall apart. But grief didn't excuse neglect, not in my mother's world. Within a month, she was calling again, asking for help with event logistics budgets, a donor dinner that couldn't possibly be postponed. I said yes, like I always had. When she named me co-trustee of the foundation, I knew it wasn't out of respect. It was insurance. I was the widow, the dutiful daughter, the one who wouldn't make waves. People like continuity, she said, like my grief was a branding opportunity. Then Declan came home. After a decade in Singapore, most of which we'd spent apart, he returned with a custom suit, a polished accent, and a TED Talk about innovating legacy. Within weeks, Mom had him on brochures in board meetings, sitting beside her at press conferences like a golden prince returned. Meanwhile, I was still handling payroll, writing thank you notes, organizing the archive room by myself on weekends. Declan got applause. I got quiet emails at 2 a.m. marked urgent, but I told myself it didn't matter. We were building something bigger than ego. My father's name still meant something. The work still mattered. I just hadn't realized how easy it was for them to take it all and make it look elegant. The stage lights dimmed just enough to signal the next round of speeches, and I instinctively smoothed the skirt of my dress, waiting for the nod that never came. I wasn't on the list. The MC, a polished young man from our PR firm, skipped straight to. And now please welcome Declan Laughlin, representing the next chapter of the Laughlin Foundation. Applause rippled across the ballroom like clockwork. I clapped 2 hands. Slow eyes searching the program again as if maybe I'd just missed it. But no, my name wasn't there. Not in the acknowledgments, not in the trustee list, not even as a courtesy mention, just Declan front and center. Vivian had seen the final draft. I'd asked her twice. She'd waved me off. Just formatting. It's being finalized. Now I knew what she'd meant. Declan took the mic with that breezy confidence he'd always worn like a tailored suit. Tonight isn't just about honoring the past. He began his voice deep and practiced. It's about modernizing legacy, about embracing leadership that meets the moment. A few people nodded. Someone at a nearby table murmured, "Well said." I looked around. Silas was no longer beside me. Across the room, I spotted Nako, 7 years old, dimpled and eager, perched on my mother's lap, hands full of petit fours. She was whispering something to him with a smile that made my stomach twist. He beamed utterly at ease. I stood slowly and made my way to the nearest exit. Upstairs, near the old foundation offices, I found Silas leaning against the wall, phone in hand, face pale. "I didn't want you to panic," he said, slipping the screen toward me, "but I needed to show you this before they lock everything down." It was an internal memo, tonight's board meeting agenda. Halfway down the document, under proposed restructure of foundation trusteeship, my name had been removed. Declan's was listed as the sole executive trustee. My hands went cold. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He hesitated. I might have guessed the Wi-Fi password and logged into the admin portal, he said, like it was just another homework assignment. It wasn't hard. They left it open backstage. I stared at the screen, at the soft-lit hallway, at my son, who saw it all more clearly than I had. Footsteps approached. My cousin Emma, a junior board member who'd mostly kept to herself since arriving, rounded the corner and froze when she saw us. I met her eyes. "Is this real?" I asked. Emma hesitated, then gave the smallest of nods. They said it would be best if it all happened tonight. Clean. Quiet. They're already in the back room with the documents. For a second, I couldn't move. I'd always known my mother didn't believe in confrontation. She believed in presentation. She didn't make power plays. She staged them. And tonight, it wasn't a mistake. It was a coronation. And I wasn't just forgotten. I was being removed. I should have asked more questions when Silas mentioned he'd been reaching out. I assumed he meant a friend from school or maybe one of Jeremy's old colleagues. I didn't expect the name he whispered next. "Aunt Marisol, I messaged her 3 weeks ago." The breath caught in my throat. She answered, "Marisol Laughlin." My father's youngest sister hadn't been invited to a family event in nearly 20 years. The official version was that she'd moved to Vermont after a disagreement about family funds. The truth, as I'd learned in hushed fragments over the years, was messier. She'd challenged my mother's control over their parents' estate after their passing. And Vivian, predictably, had erased her without a trace. Photos removed, names struck from trust documents. Family emails filtered to spam. Growing up, I was warned she was unstable and emotional. Now I was beginning to understand that in our family, those words were just synonyms for inconvenient. Silas led me through the rear hallway of the ballroom toward the garden. She said if you ever needed her, really needed her, I could text this number. He handed me the phone with the open thread. "Tell your mother she's not crazy. Tell her I know what it feels like." Marisol stood near the fountain in the garden, wrapped in a dark green shawl, her silver hair swept back in a loose braid. Her presence was quiet but grounded, like she knew exactly how this would unfold. I hadn't seen her since I was a teenager, but I recognized her instantly. "Nomi," she said softly, pulling me into a brief, steady hug. "You look just like your father when he was tired. I didn't know Silas had reached out. He's smart, smarter than I was at his age." We sat on a bench beneath the arbor, the murmur of the gala behind us, like distant thunder. Marisol didn't waste time. Vivian doesn't confront. She orchestrates. She lays the table, arranges the lighting, and lets the knife sit there gleaming until someone else picks it up. That's her genius. I swallowed hard. She's already drafted the documents. My name's off the trust. Declan takes full control. Marisol nodded. She did the same to me. At a baptism, of all things. I showed up thinking I'd be asked to give a reading. Instead, she stood before the family and announced a realignment of our grandmother's estate. Said it was for efficiency. I hadn't even known the papers were signed. The room clapped. I was erased in real time. I sat stunned, breath fogging in the night air. She thinks I won't fight. She knows you won't make a scene. That's why it's tonight, with donors, speeches, photographers. She's betting on your silence. Behind us, the ballroom windows glowed gold. The foundation staff moved like dancers, weaving among board members. "They're collecting signatures right now," Marisol added. I saw Declan in the side hall with a leather folder. "It's already happening." My stomach turned. "You can walk away," she said gently. "But if you do, they write the ending." I looked toward the ballroom doors. I'd never been the one to interrupt. Never the one to raise my voice or stop the music. But maybe this wasn't about shouting. Maybe it was about showing up in the room they hoped I'd avoid and refusing to leave quietly. The hallway behind the ballroom smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive perfume. It was the wing where real decisions were made away from the chandeliers and donor applause. I walked with a purpose I hadn't felt in years, heels muted against the runner rug, heart pounding like it had something to prove. A mahogany door stood ajar at the end of the corridor. The light spilling out was soft and warm, deceptively inviting. I paused for only a second before pushing it open. Inside the room hummed with quiet conversation and clinking glasses. 8 people sat around the long conference table, board members, 2 senior staffers, and a man I recognized only vaguely from legal correspondence. Leather-bound folders lay open in front of them, each with a pen placed just so. On the wall behind them, the Lachlan Foundation crest gleamed in silver leaf. The lawyer stood near the head of the table, mid-sentence. "And with this amendment, the Foundation ensures continuity and clarity of vision. Declan brings energy and international expertise that aligns with our growth strategy." He didn't see me at first. No one did. I cleared my throat. The sound cut through the air like glass. All heads turned. The lawyer blinked. "Oh, Nomi." "Yes," I said, stepping forward. "I'd like to see the documents you're discussing." There was a pause, that tight-lipped kind of silence that means people are calculating how much you already know. The lawyer glanced at Declan, who sat at the end of the table, casual but tense. "These are internal proposals," the lawyer began. "I'm still a co-trustee. Show me." Reluctantly, he slid one of the folders across the table. I opened it, hand steady, breath shallow. There it was, amendment to trust structure, followed by a list of approvals. My name was gone. Declan's was listed as executive trustee. But it wasn't just that. I scanned the page, then again, more slowly. One of the listed votes belonged to Thomas Greer, my father's old friend and longtime board member. He'd passed away last spring. I looked up, locking eyes with the lawyer. "This signature is forged. Thomas Greer died 6 months ago." A silence fell that no one dared break. Then I heard the click of heels. My mother entered like she was arriving at a gala entrance, not a private ambush. "It's time, darling," she said smoothly, as if offering a coat. "You've been through so much. Let us carry this forward for you." The room waited for my answer. My voice was gone. Rage, shame, grief. It all tangled into one long pause. Then the door creaked again. Silas stepped in, shoulders squared. You don't get to erase her. And just like that, the room shifted. I found my footing again. They had expected me alone, but I wasn't. For a second, no one moved. Vivian stood still in the doorway, her smile, tight eyes locked on Silas, like he was a smudge on polished glass. The lawyer cleared his throat, probably preparing to recover the room when Silas raised his phone and tapped the screen. Before anyone signs anything, he said, "Voice steady, you should hear what they said about my mom." He pressed play. The audio wasn't perfect, muffled in spots, but the voices were unmistakable. Vivian, cool and amused. She's always been fragile. That's the word to use. Fragile sounds kinder than unfit. Then Declan laughing. She won't fight. That's why it'll work. More shuffling. A pause. Then Vivian again, warmer this time. People admire her grief. Let them. We'll thank her publicly. And quietly, we'll move on. A weight settled in the room. The lawyer's jaw twitched. A few board members shifted in their chairs, pretending to study their folders like the paper held moral distance. I stepped forward. I wasn't shaking. Not anymore. You underestimated me? I said, voice calm, almost quiet. You thought I wouldn't fight because I haven't before. That was your mistake. I looked directly at my mother. You dressed this up in language about leadership and legacy, but it's manipulation. You tried to use my husband's death and my silence as leverage. Vivian's smile faltered for the first time all night. I'm calling for a legal injunction to halt any amendments to the trust. I continued, effective immediately. Declan pushed back in his chair. Nomi, don't be dramatic. This is a family matter. We can resolve this with dignity. Then you shouldn't have falsified a vote from a dead board member, I replied evenly, or laughed about how easy it would be to erase me in a side hallway. Silas still held the phone, the screen glowing between us like a lantern. Behind us, the door creaked open again. A soft voice asked, "Is this a bad time?" It was Evelyn Markham, a longtime donor, one of my father's oldest supporters. She glanced at the scene, then at the phone in Silas's hand, then at me. I heard something in the hall. Is that recording real? I nodded. Then you've got a problem, Vivienne. Her tone wasn't cruel. It was factual, the way a doctor might deliver a difficult diagnosis. She turned and walked briskly back toward the ballroom. Moments later, murmurs began to ripple down the hallway. The kind of shift you feel in the air before a storm. I turned to Silas and lowered the phone. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine with quiet fire. They were never going to stop, not unless someone made them. No one signed anything that night. The pens stayed capped. The leather folders were quietly packed away. And for the first time in decades, my mother didn't have the last word. The house felt different without the gala noise humming behind its walls. After the confrontation, after the boardroom dissolved in stunned silence, I didn't go home. I didn't go back to the ballroom either. I walked straight to my father's old office on the second floor of the main house, a place no one had really touched since he passed. It still smelled faintly of leather and pine like his aftershave. His desk sat beneath the window, layered with dust but untouched, as though time had simply paused. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe a file, maybe proof that I hadn't imagined his quiet faith in me. Instead, I found a letter. Tucked into a leather-bound planner dated 6 months before his stroke, the envelope was marked only with my name. The handwriting was his. Careful, slanted, deliberate. Nomi. If you're reading this, something shifted. You were always the one who saw the work that needed to be done, not the spotlight. That's your strength. But in this family that often gets mistaken for weakness, I want you to know that the foundation was never about image. Not to me. It belongs to the ones who do the work, not the ones who seek the credit. Protect it, shape it, and when the time comes, lead it. Love, Dad. I didn't cry, not then. I just sat in the old leather chair and let the words settle into my spine like armor. The next morning, I called Marisol. She didn't hesitate. I'm in, she said before I even finished explaining. Your father would have been proud of you, Nomi. He always was. He just never learned how to say it out loud. Together we began drafting the framework for a new fund under the Foundation's umbrella. A restricted fund named in my father's honor, dedicated to grassroots leaders, the kind of people my father once mentored in private, while the Foundation spotlight stayed elsewhere. We called it the Frederick Laughlin Trust for Quiet Impact. I filed for legal review the same week, challenging the attempted amendment and presenting evidence, the forged signature, the recorded conversation, the timeline of events. My attorney recommended discreetly by Evelyn Markham moved fast. Then came the call. A major donor family, the Stantons, who had been with the foundation since its inception, publicly withdrew their support from the board, led by Vivienne. They issued a polite but pointed statement. We support leadership that reflects not only vision, but integrity. The ripple effect was instant. Other donors paused their pledges. The board postponed its vote on the trust restructuring indefinitely. Declan went silent. My mother stopped returning calls. No press release went out, no announcement was made, but I knew the tide had shifted. The legacy they tried to weaponize was already rewriting itself, because legacy isn't built in spotlights or speeches. It's built in rooms where no one's watching, by people who choose to stay and do the work anyway. The ballroom felt smaller this time, simpler. No string quartet, no velvet ropes or gold-trimmed menus. Just folding chairs, warm lights, and real stories echoing through the room. The first annual gala for the Elon Fund, named after my late husband Jeremy, wasn't about opulence. It was about purpose. In the 12 months since that night, everything had changed, and somehow nothing had. The Laughlin Foundation still operated, but its heartbeat was different now. The old guard had stepped back, if not voluntarily then, by the steady erosion of trust. Vivienne was no longer chair. She still appeared at carefully curated functions, smiling stiffly for photos, saying all the right things. But there was a glass wall now, even between her and her loyalists. She spoke through prepared statements and proxies. Her gaze rarely met mine. Declan returned to Singapore quietly in February, a job offer announced on LinkedIn, and never mentioned again. We hadn't spoken since the lawyer's letter confirming the nullification of the attempted amendment. He didn't fight it. Maybe he knew there wasn't anything left to salvage. Marisol and I kept building. The Frederick Laughlin Trust was thriving, but it was the Elon Fund that lit something inside me. It supported public school teachers, widows navigating sudden loss, and women rebuilding their lives outside the safety of pedigree. The very people Jeremy had always championed. Silas had changed too. At 14, he stood taller, spoke more clearly. Still observant, still quiet, but no longer hiding. Tonight, when I gently asked if he wanted to say a few words, he nodded. Just a short one. He stepped onto the stage in his navy blazer, his father's, and adjusted the microphone with the focus of someone who didn't want to waste a second. My name's Silas, he said. I used to think adults always knew what they were doing, but last year I saw some try to take everything from someone who deserved better. I saw someone stay quiet for too long. And then I saw her stop. And fight, and win. There was a silence in the room, not heavy, but full. He glanced toward me. So this fund is for people who do the work even when no one's clapping. Like my dad did, like my mom still does. The applause was soft, sincere. No cameras clicked, no donor grins. Just the kind of clapping that makes you feel seen. As I watched my son step down and take his seat, his hand brushing mine, I felt something settle inside me, quiet and final. They tried to sign me out, quietly. But I was never just a name on paper. And neither is my son. If your voice was ever dismissed by the people who were supposed to love you, remember this: their silence isn't proof that you were wrong. Sometimes it takes the next generation to say what we couldn't. And sometimes the whisper that saves you doesn't come from a crowd, it comes from your own child. In a quiet moment when you're finally ready to hear it. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Sometimes being quiet isn't weakness, it's preparation. And when you finally speak, it echoes.